Hey everybody, I made this thing out of mostly junk. Our intrepid adventurers, who have dubbed themselves as a collective Good Boy, consisting of Skull, a rigger with a level 1 hover droid assistant named Bone, Holiday Creams, an infiltrator, and Max the medic, survived a harrowing escape from the war zone in Chapter 1. The war zone is the most dangerous and infamous neighborhood in Megacity Beta, a neighborhood that has always been rife with gang warfare, crime, and poverty. Murder rates and missing persons cases in the war zone have recently spiked to record levels, and the area and its denizens are being locked down and segregated from the rest of the city by a consortium of several of the larger corporations that effectively govern Megacity Beta in order to quell the growing unrest from spreading to the wealthier and more affluent areas. As the borough was being fenced off, protests and violent scuffles were erupting everywhere. Hovering camera drones moved over the streets, while windows were smashed and vehicles set ablaze. Good Boy, along with some fellow residents of their tenement, were making their way towards one of the two checkpoints allowing exit when they were accosted by members of Hogan's Disciples, a local gang of low-level thugs. The disciples were insistent that Good Boy join them in their vendetta against their rivals, the Slugs. After an intense back and forth, along with the tribute of a 12-pack of beer and the promise to eliminate any of the slugs on sight, Good Boy decided that their best option for escape was through the sewer system. As they made their way through the tunnels, they were set upon by a group of filth-covered marauders, who, after a short skirmish, which led to the death of 3 of the marauders and half a dozen members of the ragtag escapees, managed to drag away the corpses of their victims down a dank and dark tunnel. As Good Boy gave chase, they heard a muffled conversation where they could make out a voice saying, "Man, we're going to get so many credits for these." As they rounded a corner into a dimly lit chamber, they saw 2 of their attackers attempting to carry a body up a rusted iron ladder. A fight ensued, and Good Boy managed to kill one of the marauders and grapple the other for interrogation. They discovered that his name was Teddy, and that he was a former stockbroker, but the harvesting of bodies was much more lucrative. The corpses were delivered to a nondescript warehouse directly above the sewers, where they were weighed and payment was received. Having gotten all of the information that Teddy had to offer, Good Boy killed him, and after looting the bodies, hoisted them one by one up the ladder. Indeed, it was exactly as Teddy had said. They loaded the bodies onto a scale and received a bill of lading, which they presented to a rather bored-looking, bespectacled secretary behind a security window, who then proceeded to transfer credits onto their data chips. Frustrated by not being able to get any information about the purpose or people behind this operation, and realizing that they were still somewhere within the war zone limits, they decided to continue through the sewers and revisit this situation at a later date. As they wound their way through the filthy corridors, they arrived at a security gate, which was protected by 2 sentry guns. Holiday Creams managed to hack a control panel and disarm the guns, but they inadvertently alerted a level 3 mobile security bot, which almost killed Skull. They managed to defeat the bot with an energy pistol that they had looted earlier. Max was able to revive Skull with his only remaining medkit, and they made it out of the war zone alive. After renting a small apartment, purchasing some general food and supplies, 3 Kevlar vests, and outfitting themselves with upgraded firearms, Good Boy found themselves broke. They needed to earn some credits somehow. After talking with a couple of streetwalkers and cabbies, they learned that a reliable place for gigs and jobs were a couple of well-known bars in the city, the Flesh Cafe and Below Zero. They decided to head to the Flesh Cafe first. As they entered the bar, peals of laughter were heard. The patrons were watching live footage of a man being beaten to death in the streets of the war zone on the jumbo Vidtron hanging above the bar. Life is cheap in Mega City Beta. After speaking with the bartender, a hairless albino man with crystal optic implants, they got a couple of leads on work. The Diablos, a Latin gang, were currently involved in a turf war with the Crucible Kittens, an all-female gang, and were looking for someone to infiltrate the Kittens' clubhouse to reconnoiter and gather intel. They also met a rather sharp-dressed corpo woman who introduced herself as Roberta Circuit and was looking for someone to steal some demo recordings from an up-and-coming boy band called Limp Dance Rabbit Rabbit. They decided on the latter, and after learning the location of the band's third-floor apartment, made their way there sometime after midnight. After climbing a fire escape at the rear of the building and peering through a window, they saw one of the band members passed out on a sofa, most likely from ingesting too much black lace, as evidenced by the hypospray injectors strewn atop the coffee table. As they stealthily made their way into the apartment and began rummaging the room looking for the data stick containing the recordings, they heard talking and laughter coming from a back room. As Skull made his way down the hall towards the sound, a bathroom door opened and a young woman stepped out, and upon seeing Skull in the apartment, she let out a scream, alerting whoever else was here of Good Boy's presence. Without thinking, Skull and Bone, through Skull's Neuralink with the hoverbot, opened fire on the woman and killed her. Holiday Creams raced down the hall while a bedroom door opened and two more women and a young man in various stages of undress emerged, brandishing pistols. After seeing the body of the young woman who had been shot, one of the other women and the young man both opened fire, wounding Holiday Creams, while the other young woman ran past both Skull and Holiday, fleeing the apartment. Meanwhile, the figure sleeping on the sofa began to stir, and Max slit his throat with a vibro knife. After a fierce firefight, the young man and woman both lay dead. While Max administered aid to Holiday Creams, Skull quickly ransacked the bedroom from which the people emerged, and upon finding the data stick, all three of the adventurers bid a hasty retreat out of the window and down the fire escape. They returned to the Flesh Cafe the next evening and met with Roberta Circuit to deliver what she had asked for, and to Good Boy's surprise, she didn't seem to care at all that the two members of Limp Dance Rabbit Rabbit had been killed. She thanked them for bringing her the demo tapes and paid them in full as promised. Feeling emboldened, they decided to take up the Diablo's offer and see what they could discover at the Crucible Kittens Club. They arrived there the next evening by taxi, and as they approached, the bouncer at the main door, an exceptionally tall and statuesque woman with gleaming gold prosthetic legs which seemed proportionally longer than had they been natural, informed them that the club was currently closed. Upon further inquiry, they learned that two of the gang's members had been murdered while at their boyfriend's apartment recently by three home invaders. Uh-oh. Good Boy hightailed it out of there as fast as they could before they were recognized. After laying low for a few days, and after much discussion, Good Boy decided that they wanted to work as mercenaries and guns for hire, so they made inquiries around Mega City, and got several offers for work, but found that most of the offers were jobs that they were simply not yet equipped to take on, and they didn't particularly want to get involved in any of the many gang wars around town. The high-end firepower and cybernetic implants that they would need to take on some of these more dangerous gigs were simply beyond their budget. Until one evening at the Gravity Bomb, they met a road grime-covered outlander named Voxel 7. Voxel was from the Wastelands, part of a crew called the Devil Riders, who had their fingers in things like smuggling, protection, and dealing in pre-war tech which could be scavenged from all across the vast wastes. After finding out the location of the Devil Riders, they needed a vehicle. So late one evening, they boosted a tow truck and drove out of Mega City headed for the Flamenco Motor Inn. They arrived late at night to find a raucous party in full swing, motorcycles and heavily modded doomsday vehicles racing through the arid plains. They approached a group of revelers inquiring about work and were introduced to the leader of the Devil Riders, a jovially friendly, rotund, and mustachioed man by the name of Joey Bag of Donuts. He looked the group up and down and told them that there was something that a client of his had asked him to procure, and if they were willing to get it for him, he'd be grateful and they'd be in his good graces. There were some pre-war schematics located somewhere within a derelict Nevada Energy Consortium pump jack station. Goodboy drove the roughly 20 miles out to the station to find a 1-acre area surrounded by the remnants of a 10-foot-tall barbed wire chain-link fence. Within, they saw 3 inactive pumping units, a small Quonset hut, and a large rusted holding tank, atop which sat an automated 25 caliber armor buster cannon. Patrolling the area were a half-dozen mechanized killbots moving about the yard in predictable and repetitive patterns. With meticulous planning, Holiday Creams entered the area from a flanking position through a hole in the outer fence and took out 2 of the killbots with his rifle before being mortally wounded, while Skull rigged the truck to speed directly towards the holding tank, destroying both the tank and the cannon in a fiery explosion. The group easily dispatched the remaining robots, and while first aid was administered by Max, Skull hacked the security panel on the Quonset hut and was able to locate the schematics file, as well as a toolkit, 3 tins of Fidel brand taco-flavored beetle embryos, and a first aid kit. Without a vehicle, Goodboy were forced to make the journey back to the Flamenco Motor Inn on foot, but luckily they managed this without incident. As the weary and bedraggled trio presented Joey Bag of Donuts the file that they'd retrieved, the impressed gang leader paid them a generous fee with which they procured an 8-passenger cargo van. He then offered them an opportunity to try out for his Death Race team in a preliminary event. Death Race is the most popular vid show in Mega City Beta and was gearing up to begin its 71st season. The race course consisted of 4 checkpoint gates, and the first vehicle to pass through the final gate by whatever means necessary would be declared the winner. Each member of Goodboy, along with 3 other participants, were outfitted with an armor-plated vehicle equipped with a heavy machine gun. Max and one of the other racers both wiped out early and were never able to catch up again. Skull's vehicle was destroyed by gunfire as well as another of the drivers, while Holiday Creams managed to outdrive the final competitor and pass through the 4th gate, emerging victorious. They were presented an impressive cash reward, and Joey Bag of Donuts invited them to participate in the next scheduled event, which would take place in 2 weeks. He also asked them to deliver the schematics that they retrieved to his client in the city. They were to meet Leon Arkov, a mid-level lieutenant in Mama's Family, the brutal Eastern European gang, at the Below Zero bar. They arrived at Below Zero and were directed by a bouncer to Leon Arkov's table. Gaunt and hairless, with a mouthful of gold teeth and a needle-festooned cybernetic hand, Arkov offered them another job, if they were looking for some serious credits. It seems that a former colleague of his, Wendell Goldberg, a procurer of merchandise, had outlived his usefulness to Mama's Family and needed to be eliminated. Goldberg was known as a courier and go-between among the gangs of Mega City Beta and the nomads and settlements of the wastelands. Goodboy jumped at the opportunity, figuring that they would do this job while they awaited the next racing event. Arkov had no information as to Wendell Goldberg's current location, so Goodboy decided that they'd go back to the Devil Riders to see if they'd ever heard of him or knew of his whereabouts. When they mentioned Goldberg's name to Joey Bag of Donuts, Joey went pale, and the familiar smile dropped from his face. "Yous boys don't want to mess with that guy. He's part of that crew over at the Citadel." The Citadel of Scrap, Located some 80 miles north of the Flamenco Inn, beyond the burning mud flats in the foothills of the Cloridian mountain range, is a settlement that is closed to any outsiders. There are rumors of plague and cannibalism and worse. What will Good Boy do? Will they investigate the Citadel of Scrap? Will they heed Joey Bag of Donuts' advice? Will they ever race again? Only time will tell.
It's like a family tree, part of you and part of me. And if we should separate, go your own way, I won't wait.
Bring the funk back.
There were a few times that I was going to give up on this thing and made a lot of mistakes, things I would do totally different if I was to do this again with any sort of game plan. But overall, it's okay. Thanks anybody for watching, and see you again. It's like a family tree, part of you and part of me. And if we should separate, go your own way, I won't wait.
Bring the funk back.